Why is this always messed up when I literally change it every time to TFT and it just picks League. Like, what is up with that? What the what? It's not even letting me change it. Like I change it and it just is not changing. Okay, finally. I don't know why that was messed up. But yeah, I am back. I'll hopefully be able to stream a little bit more soon. Right now, what I'm going to do is go through artifacts. Like, a lot of people have done this already, but they have done it poorly. And I've had this here for some time, and I think this is still probably the best resource. Because you end up getting to stuff that gets discovered later, like Fishbone's Nocturne and Ludin's Lux and such like that. So I will go, I'm just gonna go through them again. Like obviously a lot of it is already known, but some of it isn't. People act surprised when something new is discovered, but it's been here for a while. So let's talk about it. And then obviously the ones that aren't interesting, I'm just not gonna like elaborate too much into. So Anima Visage, I'm gonna go here. Other. So yeah. Anima Visage, it's pretty generically good in every comp. It's just you just put it on your tank. There's nothing special about this one, which is fine. It's a safe option and it's good. Like you can take it in any comp. Blacksmith gloves, it's kind of iffy. There's like some OP combinations, but it's RNG, so I think the safest option is to put it on a melee carry in most comps. Like most comps will have some kind of melee item holder that could use it. Stuff like your Luxes, your like I don't know, any like I guess form swappers are probably the best users. Because you can frontline or backline them. Like I can probably change that on the site. I think because it's just RNG what you get. But at least this gives you the option to play around your like what you roll a bit better. But that's all there is to that. Blighting Jewel is probably the first one where it's a comp warping, meaning you can change what you play from the start of the game. So there's a lot of good users. So there's Like all of these. Yeah. All of these are really good. It's really good on damage over time. So Morgana Malzahar, and then Swain also, but he kind of prefers to be like this is more specifically for frontline Swain because he can shred immediately, but I think he prefers to have actual tank items. But also Silco uses this very well because he can proc it fast and because helps him generate mana and it gives him everything he wants. Rumble, once he has Flamethrower, can really benefit from this, but like when you don't have Flamethrower yet, it's not as good. And then Mel, if you hit Mel, Blighting Jewel is just really good because she hits a lot. But I think from the get-go, the best way to play with this is to play around Morgana, transition into the old Black Rose comp. I'm missing this one, which isn't like an insane comp now, but with Blighting Jewel, you can use Morgana to tempo and then transfer it to Malzahar, and then that variation is like really strong. You also can consider rerolling Morgana, which actually I'll talk about the Morgana comp later. Yeah, I'll talk about it later, but that is an option too. What am I missing? I mean, whatever. This is the core. And using Morgana because Morgana early game like absolutely loves this item, and with Morgana 2 you can very easily 10 streak, and then with one Malzahar he's just gonna permacast, and then this just becomes strong. Like he's just OP. Happy holidays. I am exhausted from the past week, but I'm feeling better now. A little bit. I mean, it's technically not over, but I'm doing all right. I'm also exhausted from dinner. But yeah, right now I'm going over artifacts. It's been on the site for a while, but when we go through it, like people have started making guides and stuff off of like stats. I see stuff on Reddit, on YouTube, but I'm making my own because I've had this up for a while. And like I covered it previously, but I didn't finish it. Well, I didn't. It was scuffed, so I'm gonna do it a little bit better. And yeah, that's all. And I hope to stream a little bit more this week than I have. I mean, I was actually super busy last week, but now I can have a bit more time, so I can stream during the holidays and chill with everybody. Clock there. Why are these like not? You know, I mean, this is alphabetical, but this is. Oh, I think it's because I forgot the. Whatever. Wait. Is this not? Oh. Gold collector? What? Oh, I didn't even pay attention to. That's what it's called in this game. It's not the collector. It's not. Okay, okay, whatever. Gold collector, I guess. Okay, so this item is like, it's just good. The stats are good. The effect is good. Like everything about it is good. The best synergies it has are units that like the stats and want the executes. which there's enough of, but there's also a lot of units that just like the stats and can use the execute. Maybe not have synergy necessarily, but there's a lot of users for this. The best, probably, Tristana. If I see this, I usually think to play Tristana. The reason for this is because she wants the kills, and this helps her get it. It's also like, it has synergy with Infinity Edge, because like normally what you'd build is this. This is probably BIS Tristana. And the reason for that is because you get really close to 100% crit. And that helps Tristana a lot. But if you have Gold Collector, it's like pretty close. It's like almost having IE, except instead you lose a little bit of stats, but you get the execute, which is better overall, and you get some gold. Tristana with the Gold Collector will farm a ton of gold. Otherwise, I think Smeech is good for similar reason. I think he's worse than Tristana, but he likes the Collector because it helps reset, and it just has a really good synergy with him. Like, I mean, Smeech isn't like that weak, but Ambusher, I don't know. I don't pay attention to how big the hotfixes were. I don't know what was changed. I think Camille was buffed. I don't know what else was changed, but like Ambusher as a comp is kind of dead, so I wouldn't think to play Smeech. But I mean, this is really, really good on Smeech because you can extend his ability a bit more because you kind of give him a bit more of a window to get resets, and that enough is pretty good. And then finally Warwick. This is like a really, really nice, like, okay, Warwick happens like late into the game, but if you do manage to have a Collector and Warwick and you're not playing something that needs the Collector, Warwick, like, he will chase and execute stuff for free anyways, so he's just a gold printing machine. The stats are also good on him. But like you're just getting the proc pretty much on every kill, regardless of who kills, because of Warwick's passive. Does it even say Warwick's passive here? Doesn't look like it. But yeah, Warwick executes units below like a certain health threshold, and the Collector does that. But the thing is, so like it's not like it stacks, but you get the guaranteed gold, so you can just go 10 with this really easily, as long as Warwick is alive. And at that point, you just give him stuff to help keep him alive, and he just fast 10. But enough about that. There's also like it's good with so many other units, like pretty much any AD carry will use it well. What else? Like any of these? This. Like any of these units can use it. However, there are like lesser than the ones I've talked about. But Gold Collector, really good artifact. Pretty safe too, because of how many people can use it. Vamp Scepter was supposed to be added in back in this set, but they haven't done it. It's probably good on Urgots, but I don't actually know because it's not in the set. It's not in the game, so that's all there is. That's Defiance. AD, attack speed, armor, omnivamp, and it mitigates damage and transfers it as a damage over time. This item is very good on boosters. Like, just generically, there isn't that much to it. There is one thing I want to talk about, which is with Blitzcrank, and that is because Blitzcrank has a passive that deals damage absorbed as magic damage to his target. So it prioritizes his current target. So even though he's technically damaging himself with the artifact, this works. Or it's okay. Like, I think it works. I'm not actually sure. I would actually like to know how optimal this is because I know Automata interacts with items and the self damage would proc his passive. So in theory, he could just rapid fire with this because of the bleed from Death Defiance. However, I do not actually know. But like it should work based on how the game works. Like it's this would be a thing that's like an oversight. Whatever, I could just be wrong. But I really want to know if this is a thing. But I never get Death's Defiance early, so I never have a means to know. But in theory, the bleed will rapidly damage Blitzcrank, which causes him to rapidly damage enemies. And that stacks Automata. So in an ideal world, he just rapid fires shoots the Automata proc. And even then, even if not, the stats aren't like terrible because the Omnivamp works with the Automata proc, so he like heals a little bit. But if I'm completely trolling in that regard, it's just good on like every bruiser type champion. Anyway, like there's a lot of them. Yeah, maybe not Vander. Like it's just a generically good artifact if you're gonna play a comp of that type. Next we have DFG, which this one's like interesting. They buffed it again, or like they changed how it works, and then they also fixed it, so now it's like actually pretty decent. But before it was a little scuffed. So they actually made the damage amp work again. So they reworked it at the start of the sets. So instead of what it did before, it just gives damage amp, like flat, and then it also has like a proc that does a large amount of damage to the current targets every 13 seconds. So this item's like pretty good now because it has just the flat damage amp. I think an interesting user is LeBlanc. So like you take it on like anyone. However, LeBlanc's ability transfers damage to like enemies, like she has the damage share. So if this procs, it does that, but the thing is like this proc does a ton of damage. Like you only realistically get it like maybe twice in a fight. So like on the first one, you're probably not gonna get it. On the second one, there's a good chance you get it. And this will just nuke the four targets hit by her ability. And it's the only way to amplify this damage. So like it's a interesting interaction. Otherwise, any AP carry. It's good. And that's it. Fish bones. People have already been talking about this. It's like nothing crazy, but there is stuff that people have missed. Who am I missing? Yeah. Yeah, so the main offenders are these two on the left. Everyone knows about Nocturne now. Everyone knows about Mordekaiser. Yeah, those are very OP. One thing that people don't know is that if you don't have a chance of like if you don't think it's possible to reroll Nocturne that game for whatever reason, you could just use Nocturne to tempo and then transition into Mordekaiser, and it's perfectly fine. And all the other Nocturne artifacts like work the same. You could if you don't think you can reroll Nocturne, just get Nocturne 2 and then fast 9 and look for Mordekaiser and then just play Mordekaiser. But the reason it's good on them is because their abilities transform their autos into AoE, which gives them a ton of like unit access to targets. So Nocturne can AoE very safely and hit a lot of units that he normally can't. And a lot of the time, he can reach backline and just shred them. And then Mordekaiser is the same, except he does more damage and it's magic. And yeah. But I've been talking about this from day one, and it only took Nocturne to be playable for them to realize that this artifact is OP on Nocturne. That's it. The other interaction is with a couple special lads. Rumble has an upgrade. I mean, I don't know if I'm gonna find it here, but Rumble has a upgrade from his Junker King ability. It's the flamethrower. It does like damage like every second to like targets like in front of him in a cone. This is extended by range, meaning it works with Fishbones. It has nothing to do with his current targets. It just works with range, meaning him hitting other units doesn't even matter, but you're cooking like in a much larger cone. So yeah, it's OP. And then Sabika is the same way, where her ability, the flamethrower, also scales with range. So if you've seen clips of like 6 sniper Sabika or triple sniper focus Sabika, this thing does I mean, it hits everyone and it does a ton of damage. And having extra range means you are just going to hit so many more units, and it is very strong. And one that people don't know about because it's a bit newer is that Warwick can also benefit in the same way. His ult is like, I don't know, he like swipes in front of him in a like a cone kind of thing, and this scales with range. So Fishbones Warwick is disgusting. His targeting doesn't really matter because he just swipes in front of him. So yeah, that's also very OP. If I can find clips of like the Rumble and the Civica, I will. I probably won't find clips of Warwick. I've only seen it once in a game. If I find Warwick clips, I will also put those. But I don't think I will. Unless I play a game in the near future and I find it. Gambler's Blade, wherever it is. I can't seem to find it, but it's just here. This isn't hidden. Everyone knows that this combo is OP. There isn't really much to talk about. The only thing is you don't have to reroll Kog'Maw. You can play Kog'Maw 2 and use this to pass 9 and then play something else. Like, it's good enough on other carries. Just anything that likes attack speed, and a lot of things like attack speed. Like, any of these ranged units. Obviously, you can reroll if you're not contested, and you just play Automata. That's also not anything crazy. Everyone knows about this comp. Just like, it's just some variation of this. But you can take it on other people too. It's like, it's not like crazy. Like, it has good stats. Like, it can give 75% attack speed, which is pretty good. But if you want to farm money and to get crazy attack speed, you put it on Cog. And like even Cog 1, I mean Cog 1 might be better in the sense that he doesn't kill stuff very fast, so you can maybe farm more gold. Yeah, that's like a min-max weird like trade-off if people want to think about that. But yeah, other range units, like I have them. I don't actually know if it's like correct to play around them. I think the difference between COG and all the others is very drastic. But yeah, Horizon Focus. It's OP on anything that stuns. What units stun? A couple of them. Yeah. So these are the main offense. There's other units that stun, but like these are the best ones. Like okay, like Zyra stuns, uh, Set stuns, Rennie stuns, and Bessa stuns. Jace stuns. Yeah. All these on the right can use it to some extent, but it's like not as good. But like these are the users that it won't be useless on. However, the best ones are these four. So this item gives tank stats, so it's kind of better on frontliners. These three are frontliners. Scar, lobs, three bombs, and it has pretty decent stats, so you can just run it as a tank item, and it gives him a bit of damage. So that's all there is to that. And you play Scar and like Kog'Maw reroll and stuff like that. Elise, melee specifically, if that needs to be like clarified. Stuns in a large AoE, and yeah, Vi. I think people don't. Not many people understand this because Vi isn't that common, but like Vi does stun, so she slams and then her shockwave briefly knocks up. It's a micro stun, but it works with this, so it is very good if you manage to find it. Like especially since you can kind of play Vi in comps where like if you don't have a good user of it in your comp, like, if you're not playing Elise for some reason, or like not for some reason, if you're not playing Elise or Scar or another unit that can use it well, you could kind of just throw in Vi with this, and she'll do good damage. Because she'll hit the whole front line, and the front line is tankier anyway. So she can make good work with this. And if you have like a rare artifactory setup where you have like something like this, I mean I'm just gonna leave it at that. And then finally Victor, 6 cost. I think people understand that stunning the whole board has synergy with artifact that stuns or that damages everything that is stunned by the user. So yeah. And like Victor's damage doesn't even scale that well unless you have like Victor 2. So this will probably amplify his damage much more than anything else. Oh, yeah. This also has synergy with Touch of Frost, which yeah. So you can get this stun proc and then this proc sits. So you can kind of run this on anyone if they have Touch of Frost. It's not like insane, but like it's it's a way to use the artifact if you can't otherwise use it. That said, people aren't really taking Touch of Frost because it's a bit. It's not like clear how much it's benefiting, even though I think this is a very good anomaly that should be taken more. But yeah, and then similarly with Warwick's experiment effect, which does the same thing. Hull Crusher. People don't realize that it was changed at the start of the set. So now it doesn't give any attack speed, but it gives health. Well, it gave health before, but now it gives AD and AP. In addition to the armor and magic resist that it already gave. This is a pretty like significant stat stick if you compare it to this, where you're not getting the mana, the attack speed, but you're getting kind of similar stats otherwise, and you're getting more health. The best users are just things that scale kind of like evenly with a bunch of stats. So I would say like these. What else did I have? Yeah. I think these, if you were to play them as bruiser, I mean this is a bruiser, but if you play them as bruisers, it's pretty good on all of them. Rennie's is a bruiser, so she scales pretty well with health, and then can use AP and AD well. Vander, same thing. He's a watcher. He's not a bruiser, but he scales well with AD and AP. And then Ambessa kind of plays like, I mean, people know how to play Ambessa, so, but she uses all the stats well, and she's 2 range, so it's a bit easier to isolate her from like and get the thing. Otherwise, it's pretty generic. People could take it. What in other comps? Infinity Deal Force is quite literally the same thing, except it's a bit less special. You just take this on literally any bruiser that you would realistically play around. I mean, I don't know who. Like, it's just like you want to put this on melee damage dealers mostly, but there isn't that much that goes into that apart from that. Locket. This set, it's not as good as it was last set. There aren't a lot of good users. The problem is like the best users take too long to cast, so like it's okay. I think the best user, like, and this isn't to say that it's like you warp your comp around it, but I think Steb can benefit a lot, and the reason for that is because of his passive. He kind of spread the healing to allies, so like I think this interaction makes it better on him. That said, unlike Blighting Jewel or like Fishbones, I wouldn't warp your comp around it. However, I do think he's the best user. You can kind of safely take this on your main tank. However, it's a bit situational. Because, like, something like Mundo and Garen, they already heal a lot. So, how much you actually need to heal more doesn't really... It doesn't matter as much. Maybe something like Blitzcrank might be better because he doesn't have healing. He can benefit a lot. Like just following the basic rules of defensive and offensive stats, which I probably will make a video on in the future because I think that's something that people need to be reminded of / be taught. Like the reason why you want to itemize in a certain way. But yeah, it also has another effect. It's not that significant, but I mean, I'll talk about it. The holder gains 2% of their total mana whenever they're hit. This is not bad on users like these who have like very large mana costs. Like it can help them cast faster. But apart from that, it's a little weak, so it's nothing crazy. Lich Bane is pretty much a Kog'Maw artifact. It's good on other people, but it's especially good on Kog'Maw just because he casts very often and he's an attack speed based champion. This isn't an attack speed based artifact, but because of how fast Kog'Maw can start casting, it just helps a lot. He just uses it better than anyone else. If you have this, I would look to reroll Kog'Maw, just because a lot of the other users that you would pivot into don't use it as well. Like, unironically, the next best user is probably like Zeri, and I don't think you want to play. I mean, okay, there's also like, yeah, these. And the problem is just that right now, none of these are like. I mean, Mel. If you hit Mel, like it's good, but like none of these are like super standout in the meta. Like the best is Heimer. You can play him in Academy. The thing is, Heimer wants very specific items, so it's kind of hard to fit in Lich Bane because you lose out on like a Gunblade or something, which is pretty important. And the problem is that like these units aren't that. I mean, they're not weak. I guess I could try to figure out how strong they are when given a really good setup. But right now they're just not meta, and I have to play around with it more. Light Shield Crest. People don't take this one, but I think it's pretty good now because they've buffed it a lot. It used to be pretty bad, but I mean the stats it gives now, like it's actually just a good tank item. Its effect is decent. The best user because of an interaction is Vander, and the reason for that is because during his ability he gets more armor and magic resist, so he can create a bigger shield. That's about it. Like you would use this in like family comp probably, but otherwise you just put this on your main tank for whatever comp. Like I'm not gonna put all of them, but just main tank, anyone, and it's pretty good. I guess it's better on the ones that want armor and magic resist over like so like stuff like Blitzcrank. If you're playing Automata, maybe not because he has a lot of armor. Like on Sentinels, it's not that good. But if you're not playing around like if you're playing around Rebel Alawi, it's better. I mean, even if you are playing around Sentinel, because of the fact that the resistances scale with armor and magic resist, it's not even bad. I guess yeah, no, I think it's fine in any tank, like regardless. Ludens. I really want to talk about this because I believe that people have the wrong idea as to what this is good with. This artifact, yes, it has 4580 AP, and most notably, it has Overkill. What this does is all extra damage you do to a target when you kill them, it does plus 100, and then it splashes that damage to the three nearest enemies. So the way you want to play around this is to look for units that have a very large chance of overkilling. What does that mean? You want units that have very large instances of damage and are very likely to kill units. So what I mean is you have like, let's say you have something like Silco. Silco can do a lot of damage, but his damage is split into very small amounts that he just does a lot of. So if you kill with Silco and he is doing, let's say he is doing 100, like his little monstrosities, let's say they're doing 150 damage. The overkill damage just takes into account damage of that one monstrosity that caused the kill. So for that reason, it's not good on Silco or any other instance where the target isn't doing a lot of overkill damage. I guess I can include these two. But yeah, so what you want to do is you want to look for a very large single instances of damage. The best user, I think, because of how easy it is to play, is Lux. Now, people are already aware of Lux being OP because of Lone Hero. However, you don't need Lone Hero for Lux to be OP. Yeah. Lux is an incredible Ludens user. And the reason for that is because her ability is one large instance of damage. Her cast grants a shield, and her next attack does a lot of bonus damage. Because of that, you can very easily one-shot something, and then that one-shot damage will spread to 3 targets, and that can just chain, and it just does a ton of damage. Like, Lux is so incredibly likely to overkill that the amount of power that this gives to to her is really strong, especially since it removes her pretty much only weakness, which is the fact that she is so likely to overkill that she's usually wasting damage. However, this is literally the item that removes that weakness. And it just turns Lux into an incredibly overpowered unit because, like, for comparison, Nami 3 does less total damage than Lux 3. The only problem is that Lux 3 can waste damage a lot. But with Ludens, that does not happen. So, yeah. I think this is more OP than Lone Hero Lux. That's all I'm gonna say. Another user, for the exact same reason, but it's a little bit more weird, is Vander, because his ult does the same kind of thing. He scales well with both stats, which is a bit different than a lot of these who only scale with like their one stat. Vander benefits from both AD and AP, but also his attack has the same ratio as Lux, except it also scales with like because it's AD, it scales with the star level. So like with this, you will literally be one-shotting, and it is just OP. It's the same thing as Lux, except yeah, I'm not gonna go into this too much because people forgot about Bruiser Vander since they nerfed it, and then since Violets became viable, people don't play this version of Vander. But Vander also does a massive amount of damage to a single target, and as a result, he's a very good user of Ludens. Now Powder is just it's just good. She's AoE, but it's one massive instance of damage, so she can actually use this very well. Like 700 base damage. It's pretty close. Like Lux has 900, but Powder's AoE, and her mana cost is like really high. But if it procs on enough units, like the overkill is per unit, so like if you hit and kill like 2 units, like let's say, you can probably be more, but that's gonna count for each of them, so it just does a lot of damage. So you can very often one cast one kill. You can also like frontline Powder. You can play like that version, like this, and like you play the 5 ambusher family setup, and that also works. This is like almost a death cap, anyway. But the overkill damage is like a massive damage increase. So Powder's a very, very good user. Tristana is ability cast, and her ability can scale to do a lot of damage. So early game it's not that good, but late game it's really, really strong. So if you end up with a Ludens somehow, it's good, but I wouldn't think to play Ludens from the start. Because early on, it doesn't do enough damage. But it can be very good. Jinx is just like Powder, except uh, it just hits the whole board instead. But it takes a little bit longer. But it's the same. It's the exact same situation as Powder. And then Caitlyn, she's just a lot of damage, a lot of base damage. And Savika also does a lot of the base damage. However, I think these are not as good as the other. Like realistically, I would look to play around one of these three units. So the Lux comp, it is the same as the Lone Hero comp, except I'm actually okay. There's variations to Lux, but the standard is just to play Sentinel. You just play Vertical Sentinel. While you roll, I guess while you're rolling, it's just gonna be this. Yeah, it's just this, hit Lux 3, and then you just play anything. Like you can play Academy, you can play Six Sentinel, you can play Black Rose if you want to, you can play Sork. Just have some frontline for her. But the only thing you need is Ludens plus a damage item, plus like either something like this or something like this. You can also just go like greedy and try to, like if you can get onto the same side as like a weak unit, like let's say they're playing Black Rose and they have like a Vlad over here, you can kind of greed for the overkill damage just by going like as maximum like damage as possible. That's also an option. But I think like the safer option is just to play normal Lux and then do something like this. Just not something like this. Like Vander will be played with Family, and you can play with. Okay, actually, there's another comp, but I'll talk about that later. But you can just play this with like the original Family comp. So like the before Violet was meta, there was this. This was the OG. And this one you play with these items. And so stats wise, this is pretty much the same thing as having a Titans. Like normally you would just play this, but if you have a Ludens, you might as well take advantage of the fact that it synergizes with everything this variation of Brander wants to do. So yeah. And then Powder, like I said, just play like Ambusher, Family, and plus some other stuff. Yeah. I think at one point people thought this was the worst artifact in the game. However, I'm pretty sure it's the best artifact in the game. So I will leave it at that. Manazane, OP on most units. It's particularly good with Visionaries, especially Heimer wants to ramp, so this is very good. Malzahar wants to get his stacks up fast, so it's really, really, really OP on these two units in particular. Otherwise, any other AP carry, like AP primary carry, actually not even prime like AP, just any caster primary carry. I guess like any of these. But I think in D2 it's better because they get more mana and they need the early mana more. But you can take this in any caster comp. Yeah. Middens. Besides Hero Augment Singe, doesn't really have anything special going for it. However, it is very good on just users. And even then, Hero Augment Singe doesn't really need it. It's just funny looking. But you just take this on any bruiser type units in the front line. Any of these. The stats it gives are pretty good. It gives a lot of attack speed. It gives immunity to chill. It gives movement speed. It also gives damage reduction. It gives durability. So yeah, but I don't have any. I don't have nothing special for that. That's also good on Warwick. Mogul's Mill. It's okay. So as a tank item, it's not very good. It's a very good gold generation item. So you want to put this. Well, you want to take this when you have other tank items that you can make, and then if you have other tank items and you can start stacking gold really quickly, then it becomes really valuable. I think one, I mean, it's not like that particular, but with Scar in particular, I guess he has Firelights, and Firelights can make him drop aggro because he moves around. So sometimes if this is at 35 stacks, he can live a little bit longer, so he can snag an extra like gold or so, just because he moved. But otherwise, early game you put it on your main tank, but later in the game you just put this on a random unit. Like you're just using this to get gold early. As an item, it's not that good, but for getting gold, it is pretty good. Like when you don't have three tank items, or like real like better tank items, then it's good because it is a tank item. But when you have like a replacement for it, you'd probably move it, and hopefully it's done its job. Prowler's Claw. So I think people were sick of this. So they overbuffed it, and now the stats it gives is like ridiculous. It's 40 AD, 200 health, 50 crit strike. When you kill a target, you shed negative effects and jump, and your next attack deals a ton of bonus crit damage. So it's pretty good on like any. I mean, it doesn't have to be AD, but I guess it's better. Like, it's not even that bad on Macaulay, but like honestly, like you could take it on like more to Macaulay. but anything that is okay with jumping around. So like you want to look for a melee because it'll jump you to the enemy backline usually, or it'll jump to the enemy board, it'll jump to something on their side. So it's not that good on ranged. But yeah, this is just it has too much numbers. Like it's just broken because there's just too much numbers. Literally, without the passive effect, this item would still be good. Realistically, I would just look to reroll something. Probably one of these. I mean, I don't know how strong Camille is now that they buffed her again. It's probably pretty good, but I think any of these are fine. If you want to push levels, or I mean, you can play Urgots, but if you want to push, it's not bad on these units either. And then if you have like Artifactory, or if you have like a ton of stuff and you kind of don't care, it's not even bad on these guys as well. But the main gameplay is to use the jump. It's within 4 hexes, and it's the furthest. So if you position in this manner, like in this 3rd hex or this 5th hex, this will cause them to jump to backline. Or like to the corner target. Like this one will make them go there. So because of that, you can snipe key targets just by positioning well. Realistically, the best user is Camille, but since he was like over nerfed, I don't know if it's better to just go Violet or Nocturne or whatever. Or yeah, I mean they buffed her again, so I don't know how much it is, but Camille would be the best candidate just because she her damage is faster because her mana cost is lower, and because she's an ambusher, she has synergy with crit, whereas these other units don't have synergy with crit. Though they can, in theory. But Camille has innate synergy. It's the same reason why invisibility is like technically better on Camille than on stuff like Nocturne, just because Camille has synergy with crit. Whereas with others you have to work a little harder to get there. Oh yeah, and Warwick. Warwick gets kills for free. Like he steals kills. So with Prowler's Claw, he is just one jumping all over the board like more than normal, but he's also like he's the pattern usually happens where he is going to get some attacks and then something else is going to die. So he's going to pretty much permanently have these bonus attacks, which I mean, just looking at this is a ton of damage. Like with this, you kind of want to have like this. I mean, even then, it doesn't matter. And the reason for that is because auto attacks can crit. You don't need like Infinity Edge or Jeweled Gauntlet to make your auto attacks crit. If you want to make your ability crits, you do, but auto attacks can crit, so you don't actually need like you don't need this. But normally, like you'd have like something like this, and that's pretty good. Because with this, you already have I think 95% crit, so you're pretty much guaranteed to get that crit damage. And even if Warwick doesn't kill stuff, he will jump to them because of his Warwick passive. Yeah. Because of this. So he'll pretty much permanently have it active. So if you find this late into the game, it is very OP. RFC. It is the exact same thing as Fishbones, except it works slightly differently, but it's good on the exact same units for the exact same reasons. Right. Yeah. All these units. So the main difference between fish bones, which this doubles their attack range and then makes them attack randomly and stats. This is more attack speed, no AD, but it gives them one range, which in a lot of cases is double, but not necessarily. Like for like all these melees is technically double, but like I mean, if you get more range somehow, it's not double, but like it also is a +1 when the holder kills an enemy. So like the Exodia combo is just having both at the same time, but that's not very easy to have. But if you have this on literally any of them, it is disgustingly OP. If you don't have both, you just have the one, you just play the exact same way. I think Fish Bones is a bit better on like these guys, and I think RFC is better on these. But either way, the gameplay pattern is going to be the same anyway. You're just going to play around Nocturne, and then decide what you're going to do, either reroll Nocturne or tempo into any of these. And RFC makes Savika Flamethrower big, Rumble Flamethrower big, Warwick ability big. So it is very, very strong. Seekers, it's pretty generic. They buffed it at the start of the sets, or I think at the end of last sets. So it's like pretty decent now, but yes, it's just stat stick for AP units. It's decent on tanks. It's decent on AP carries. Best user is probably Echo, and you play him in the Echo Bruiser comp. Not the Bruiser, like the Firelight Ambusher comp, the the Boy Savior comp. And I mean, I guess for people who don't know what that comp is, but yeah, you play this. You're playing around tank Echo. You want to get as much firelight as possible, like 3. But if you get an emblem, it's even better. And then you want to build a ton of healing onto him. And you want to go for a tank anomaly, preferably armor, because that makes him like you're just playing him as a drain tank. But with Firelight, he can jump to backline and also heal himself and also keep himself safe and keep the enemy not safe. But yeah, that comp is like it's very fun, but it's hard to play. But with this artifact in particular, it is very good because it's like kind of a perfect item for Echo. Like this I would look to force. However, I mean it's okay on anything else. Like any AP unit or tank. Silvermere Dawn. Okay, I don't know if this works. I've just been told it does. However, I've never seen it. So I don't actually know. But allegedly, his auto attacks, like because they're replaced with lasers and they hit multiple enemies, apparently this stuns all the enemies hit. I don't know if that's true. I don't think it should be true, but that's just what I've heard. So I'll bring it up here. If it's wrong, I mean that's fine. I'm not the one. It's fine. But in case that is true, I'll bring it up. But otherwise, it is best on units that kind of don't care about attack speed and they want a lot of AD and or resists. It's pretty good on just most bruisers. I think the main one that doesn't want it is Mbessa because she's kind of attack speed based. But yeah. So the actual stats this gives, it's 120% AD, 60 armor, 60 magic resist. It grants CC immunity and the holder attacks stun the target for 20 seconds. It also locks the attack speed, the base attack speed, to 0.5. You can't gain any more attack speed. It is 0.5. So I guess you'd normally look to play Violet, or also play like Camille, but you just reroll one of these probably, or not probably. Like, just depending on what you have. If you have a spot for it, if you're going to push levels, it's pretty decent on Vi. It is pretty decent on Caitlyn, and the reason it's good on Caitlyn is because she's locked in her ability more often than not, so she doesn't need to attack that much. And then Maddie, it's good on Maddie if you have. Oh, Cosmic Field isn't even in the game anymore. It's just not good on Maddie anymore. Never mind. It's not good on Maddie anymore. I will fix that. But yeah, melee Jace can use it well because he can get mana. I mean, all of these units can get mana from being hit. The armor and magic resist helps them survive long enough from doing so, and then it just gives them a lot of damage. In a world where GP frontline is good, it's also probably good. Yeah. Stuff like this. But yeah, this is just a bruiser item, kind of. It's okay on a couple backliners, like Caitlyn. But stuff that, like, care about their attack speed, like these, you wouldn't really take it on. Sniper's Focus. It's like the same thing as Rapid Fire Cannon and Fishbones, except it's better on the other units that don't care about that. So it is good on like the same usual suspects. But the thing is, like, having only one of them, it doesn't do that much. It's nothing crazy. Like, it's probably better on these than it is on these two. But apart from the, if like the thing is, like, if you have multiple, like if you have like either Artifactory or Calls of Chaos, then it becomes really good on like these. However, it is also just like because the stats it gives, I mean the stats it's like not crazy, but it has damage amp, so it is pretty good on just any like ranged carry as well. So something that would like for instance like Twitch, Caitlyn, not so hard, like literally any like pretty much any carry that like can use it well. Alright, okay. Any carry can use it well. Is what I meant to say. There's a couple units that like I guess have like better synergy. So it's like Ziggs, who hits random targets. If you hit like opposite corner, that's a lot of damage amp. So that's pretty good. Uh, also stuff like that. Range GP has something similar where his charges are based on range. So yeah, the same thing. He can randomly hit backline targets and it does up extra bonus damage because he hits further away. Uh, yeah. Jinx, her, I mean, she can hit like backline, but like her third cast will hit everyone, so it's guaranteed to do a ton of damage to the opposite corner. So like her third cast has damage fall off, like reduced by 10%. But with Sniper's Focus, it's like it's this doesn't even exist. So you're actually just going to one shot. I guess if I were to include the entire list, yeah. I mean, I guess I'm missing like the point is it's ridiculous. This item is just very it's a very safe pick, and it is very good. Spectral Cutlass. So I've had this here for a bit, but I saw Little Duck also use this, so I mean it's just validation to me. But yeah, so there's a lot of units that you can send backline, and it'd be very good. I mean, I guess this is fine. It's mostly these, but like, what's nice about Powder is that she can just suicide cast once and then blow up the entire backline. So that's also good because she has the actual burst damage to use it well. It's like kind of like for similar reasons as Luden's, except this is like direct backline access, so it becomes very very strong. You just play like this, and it is very strong. Otherwise, any of these units, well, what it does is it places it teleports to the opposite side. So if you put like your unit on this hex, it'll take them all the way to this one. It's like the opposite. It's opposite both this way and this way, horizontally and vertically. So, and then it also just gives like the stats it gives are really good. And after 8 seconds, they go back to their starting location. So you want to use this to try to get some like assassinations going on. So you have like some single targets, some AoE, but like it just depends. Any of these like bruiser units as your main carry would use it well. Some can kill more than others, like more units, but it doesn't really matter. It, they buffed the stats so much that like the item is just really strong. Like it gives a lot of resists, whereas I don't think it should. But yeah, this item is very strong. Suspicious trenchcoat. It is OP on stuff that can like it's really good on these bruisers that can heal really well. So it's really good on pit fighters because they have a lot of healing. It's really good on stuff like Mbessa as well. Like even after the nerfs, there's just too many units that like are like 1v9 machines that it's a kind of a problem. So the stats it gives are now very little, but once per combat, you drop aggro and you split into 3 copies of yourself, each with only 30% of the max health. However, if these copies lost angle enough and they cast, that is usually a problem. Like if you have 3 violets casting, like you're just gonna one shot 3 targets. Mbasa, Vi, Savika, Camille, like it's all the same thing. Whereas it's very easy for them to do something even with their thing because Trenchcoat is an aggro drop. And like even if they die immediately after, like if you like if as long as they get like 1 cast off and they do their thing, it's usually enough. Because 3 casts, because okay, I guess the main reason is because there isn't very good AOE this set. So because of that, they're not getting punished for splitting. With enough consistent damage, it's like manageable. But a lot of comps just struggle to kill the copies before they cast. And if you get 3 Savika casts, 3 Vi casts, even like 3 little Camille's getting their thing off, like you're gonna one shot the enemy tank, and then what? Like they've done their job. So like it's very annoying. Yeah, so you want to look for bruisers, like those types of units. Talisman. This one's like really funny to play around. It gives like okay stats, and then at 22 seconds, it gives 100% max health and 120% damage amp. So like obviously, if you got the Ascension, it's insane. So you kind of need to play around getting there. So this is a comp warping artifact. I mean, well, I haven't been saying whether they are or aren't, but this is definitely one where you want to play around because you need like you kind of instantly win the fight if you get this to proc. The best candidates for it, I think, are Rennie and Nunu, just because you can reroll them. Uh, Rennie is a bit better, but it's like a little difficult. If you can hit Nunu, it's kind of similar. The general idea is to let them like get 6 bruiser, and then let them ascend, and then with that they'll usually have enough damage to and tankiness to not die and to just kill everything. Rani will do it slowly. Nunu will do it a little bit faster, but Nunu is like a little less durable because they don't heal. And if you get slow cooker, then it's good, but like Rani is like a little bit less needy. So realistically, you're going to play 6 bruiser plus like literally anything backline, like but like something like that. Or you can play like Victor, or like you can play like it doesn't matter. Victor's last. So this doesn't okay. This doesn't work anymore because they removed it. But if you Trickster's Glass Garen and you made another Garen, the emissary bonus would you could give it to both of them. And because the emissary bonus used to work on themselves, you just like stacking a lot of extra health. And increasing the amount of health you're giving to other allies. However, that's not in the game anymore, so I should probably remove that from the site. However, what else you can do? Do I have it here? I don't. Okay. So another one interaction is with Jace, because both Jaces will proc the thing onto the Hex Forge. So you can like double shield or double attack speed. And because the mana costs are different, it'll be like disjointed. So like it's actually better. Oh, another thing with Trenchcoat is that the copies also work like that. However, with Tricksters it's easier because you don't have to worry about them dying. So yeah, Tricksters. No, that's not Tricksters. Tricksters Jace. Summon a second Jace and you can get. Oh, it's only 10% more max mana, but like the point still stands. One will cast and then the other, so you get the effect longer, and that's really nice to play around. Other units are just things that have good value. So like if you can get an Elise frontline, and you create a second one, and then if they both cast, that's very impactful. You can put like them on opposite sides, like this, so that regardless of where they're positioned, you can get the enemy carry. Or if you know for sure what side, like who you're gonna fight, you could just double stun, and that's also really powerful. Double LeBlanc is also really strong because the damage share, like I mean, they work separately, so you can just damage share more if you have two LeBlancs and they're hitting like if they're hitting similar things, like it just does both of them at the same time. So you're just adding extra damage. Like just LeBlanc as a unit multiplies the damage that her allies does. So if you get that twice, that is very strong. And even if not, if you just get it once but more often because they're not at the same time, that's also good. Unending, unending despair. You put on shielders. The best shielders are these. These are the best tanks that shield. A couple other traits shield, like Dominator shields, Enforcer shields. So like those also work. But I think this is like a little weak, but I would look to play one of these two for sure. I mean that's like your only option. What's End is just like Lich Bane. It's pretty much a Cogmaw only item. It's okay on some other units. Mordekaiser can use it pretty well. But this is mostly a Cogmaw item. If you get this, you just look to play Cogmaw. Zanya's is just good on most AP carries. It's kind of a better Edge of Night, so you can kind of play this on any carry that would want that as well. But the best use, I mean, this one doesn't have like much. It's just good on like Everything. Like literally everything. Like at worst, you just treat this as a better Edge of Night because it lasts longer and it gives armor and magic resist, which is a little bit better. But at its best, you're putting it on a unit that also scales well with AP, which is a lot of units. Put on backliners, you can put on frontliners. Doesn't really matter. But yeah, that is that. If I do have changes, they will be on this site and I will update them. It's been a little while since I've been on a break. Not okay, not on a break. I've been busy, so it's been a while. But I have some changes I'll make, and if stuff changes with like the patch cycle, I'll obviously update it to the best of my ability. Okay, enough about that. Another thing I want to talk about is a there is an augment called Worth the Wait. This is a very interesting augment. It is very fun to play around if you know what you're doing, but a lot of people are afraid to take it because there are a lot of bad options. However, I'm here to alleviate that tension and show that honestly, there really aren't that many bad options. If you know what to do, this augment is very, very strong. And then there's also a prismatic version. So this is for one costs. You will get a bunch of copies of a single one cost, and then the general gameplay pattern is to play around the 4-star version of that one cost. There is a prismatic one that does the same thing for 2 costs. So I have some lists talking about that, and I will go into what you do in each case. So yeah, this is worth the wait one. I will maybe find a way to put it on the site, and probably the following comps as well. I'll look into that. But yeah, the best ones are the ones that have the best direction for something, and then the worst ones are like the ones that don't, where the unit itself doesn't do that much and the direction isn't that strong. So starting from the bottom, uh, I think Steb, Darius, Irelia, and Trundle, they're the worst options. They're not bad though, because they still provide a lot of tempo. I think early game these are better than like a lot of these, but just that late game they're not as valuable. So Trundle is a scrap bruiser. It's really awkward to play him with bruiser because having a Trundle 4 doesn't really do much. It's I think better to play around scrap and you just use Trundle as like your main tank, your item holder, and then you play around scrap. And Trundle will help you win streak. If you really want to, you can ignore Trundle 4 and play around Trundle 3, and then you just use the extra Trundles for econ. Same thing for a lot of these. It's like you can try to play around Trundle 4, but it doesn't do enough, I feel, to be worth putting items on him instead of other units like Corki and Echo and Rumble. So, but playing around Scrap is pretty good. I'm gonna team builder. Normally your comp will look something like this. You could probably do something like that. In scrap, aren't gonna really put items on Jumbo. You're just gonna put your Echo items onto him, or your Rumble items, and then you play around Corki, and then this is just the normal scrap board. And then Irelia, you can play around Sentinel. However, I don't think it's that necessary. I think it's probably better to play around Rebel, just because having Irelia, the Rebel board needs frontline a little bit more than the Sentinel board does, and Irelia 4 versus Irelia 3 isn't that big. So you were just going to play the standard Rebel board. You have Irelia 4, which is like a good tank. It's a good secondary tank to Alawi. It's early on, you'll have Irelia 3, so you'll have a pretty healthy transition into the full comp. And then once you have Irelia 4, you're still going to have your items on Alawi, but secondary tank items, if you have, or whatever, are fine on Irelia. If you want to stay on Irelia 3 and again sell the extra copies for gold, that's also fine, because the gap between Irelia 3 and Irelia 4 is not very large. Darius, you can play around Watcher, but like what playing around Family, it's like a bit awkward. You can play around Conqueror. So Darius is supposed to be more of a carry, but the problem is that he's not that like he falls off. Early on, he's a very good carry, and like your Darius 3 will steamroll, but like by the time you're like mid stage 4, he's already falling off. Not even mid stage, like by the time you're stage 4, your Darius is falling off. So like he gets stuck too easily. So it's better to just move stuff to Ambessa later, but you can play your Darius 3 uh win streak, and then you sell the extra Dariuses for money, and yeah. I think it would be more interesting if Darius 4 were viable to be a main carry, but currently it's just not strong enough because he gets stuck and he dies too easily. And like you need the single target. Like if you were to play around Darius, you kind of need the Draven 3 as well, and this augment is not going you're not gonna get that. So if there's like one tank, he'll get stuck and then he will die. So that's the problem. But the Conqueror board that you eventually want to play is something like this. Like you will play Gangplank in the mid game, but eventually you want to transition just to have as many legendaries as possible. A lot of them can fit. You can also fit this and this. But I think in order of priority, it's like Rumble for Sentinel, and then Jace is pretty, or LeBlanc is pretty good. If you get a Victor, that's also good. But yeah, you have not there's three, and you're just playing Conqueror, and you're using this 2-win streak. Like you are definitely going to make items for the Darius that you will eventually move onto Ambessa. So with that in mind, like I guess you just look for the Ambessa items, but like that's how you're gonna play. And then Stab, same thing as Trundle. Bruiser's really awkward to play around. He doesn't do enough. At least Stab has a little bit more going for him in that you can do this. So okay, playing around Bruiser is viable because you can do this, which I'm about to show you, which is whoa. He does magic damage and he heals a lot, and he heals his allies, and you can basically hero augment this, like it's basically playing like the hero augment. And the bruiser board buys a lot of time, and he can heal quite a lot. He keeps them alive pretty well. Something like this maybe, because his passive works on redemption. And you just play any random backline. Alright. This is probably the easiest. And the benefit to this, with this, you can play 4-star. And what this does, it like actually turns him into like, it's basically hero augment at that point. Like you get it for free, but you're not rolling for step 3, you're just pushing levels. By the time you get there, you're pretty good. You also, like, these guys want 80 items, so you're not even contesting them. And like your bruiser board is like tanky enough. But like if you look at this, like these numbers are like pretty good, which is why I think it's like viable. At 4-star, the scaling is like he actually does pretty good damage. I think the damage is like around 800. So like there's definitely something there. The other option, which is like the more standard option, is just to play around Enforcer. In which case step 4 is like a little bit less important because the rest of your board actually has damage. So you can sell the extra copies if you want. At least here, this front line isn't that strong, so going for step 4 is actually like okay. Because you don't have a good main tank here. You normally run a Lowy, but she's not an enforcer, so it's like not as good. And like if you don't have an enforcer emblem anyway, this comp isn't that good. So like if you have to play around 6, it's kind of a best spot anyway. I guess maybe you do need the step 4. But honestly, I think that I'm not sure. I don't like this one that much. Yeah, this is the other option. The best case scenario, you get an enforcer emblem. If you do not, I think this one might be worse than the bruiser version. However, here you would put normal tank items on him. And hope for the best. Next we have Vex, who can be played in a couple spots. You can play him. You can play her in Rebel. Her base damage is actually pretty good now. Her scaling is pretty good. you want to center her. The reason being, her AoE is more likely to hit more units in the center. Right. Yeah. The only problem is that you kind of contest Zoe on items, but it's not that big of a deal because you can kind of like you just split both and you can delay your Jinx items because Vex does do a lot of damage, and Vex is a very strong unit early game. So this board, like you just play like normal. The other option is to play around Sentinel. The thing is, you're rerolling anyway, so it becomes really awkward for your bench space. So I wouldn't like really advise it. But you can also play Vex 4 on this board with like this classic board, the Black Rose Visionary board, and she slots in pretty well. She does a good damage. However, this with this variation, it's probably better for Morgana, which is why I think I have Morgana higher. Yeah, because with this you can just play Morgana 4 and Malzahar instead of Vex 4 and Heimer. But I mean, it is an option. And Vex is a strong enough carry that like it's kind of fine. Maddie, kind of similar to Stab. It's awkward to play Enforcer without an emblem, so you can do that. But the thing is, you can also play just around Sniper. Sniper, you don't even need that much. Like 2 snipers, fine. And there's a lot of snipers you can play around. Because you don't need to reroll her, it's better to look for something like this. You can play around Twitch or Caitlyn, or even maybe all three, something like this, and then play around like Bruiser, and then you get some other stuff in. And this is too many units, but you can play. Honestly, you can play 4 sniper. You can play 2 sniper. You can play. I guess you can play like even sentinel or something if you want. You can play any kind of frontline. Sentinel. The Watcher. This is another 4 sniper variation you can play. I guess if it's a little bit better. You could just play around with this. Next we have Draven, which you're playing the same comp as Darius, but it's just a bit better if you get Draven. Because Draven 4 is single targets, so he actually has the means to kill units and does enough damage. This Draven you can just carry from the get-go. Is not really a transition. Draven 4 is just solid. It's a little slow, but it's usually pretty good. You do need secondary carries, but with Conqueror you can fit in a lot of stuff and you can figure out what you want. You can play around Jace, Mordekaiser, Ambessa, Rumble. Like you're not worried about your options. You just need to decide on something. Draven just wants anything that scales his damage. He gets a lot of AD from Conqueror, so you don't need to worry about it that much, but like attack speed, damage amp is usually the best kind of things to look for. Yeah. And this variation is better than the Darius one because Draven ha doesn't get stuck on stuff very easily. And like the thing is Darius getting stuck, he'll die, but Draven is at least a backliner, so he has to wait for pretty much his entire front line to die before he's being threatened anyway. So yeah, that's the difference. Now we have a bit more of an interesting one, which is Zyra. I have I'm gonna say, I don't remember what it was, but I have a Zyra comp, and it is interesting. Not really, but is it this? Yeah, it might be this. Yeah. So this is a Black Rose version. Zyra is actually very strong. You can get experiments in. Her experiment bonus gives a lot of damage. Like, it is a lot of damage. So, Zyro 4 is actually very, very strong. The problem is just that the comp is awkward, and I probably wouldn't play this without. It's not even true. I don't know for sure. It's a little awkward to reroll, but I guess you can just transition into the rest of the frontline board and then reroll like with something on its own. But yeah, you can play around this, and then you can itemize her with like. Honestly, this is play better, and then you play like. Honestly, I'm just gonna go back to this. I don't know if this is the best setup, but I think it's pretty good. And in this setup, Zyra just does a surprisingly high amount of damage. At 4 star, I think she does like 800 or 900 damage. And then with her experiment bonus, like she does a lot of damage. So she's definitely viable. And then the rest of the board fits nicely with Black Rose. You can get 4 Sorcerer in, you can get Bruiser, Visionary, and stuff. Like, and then you can just main tank literally whoever you hit. If you hit Mundo too early, or you can consider Swain 3 or Nunu 3 if you have the means to go for them. Because you don't have to reroll for this, so you are going to be pushing levels, and that's the benefits of having worth the weights. You are pushing levels so you can find better options for your board. Like with an early Zyro 3, you're gonna tempo anyway. And you should have a lot of health and a lot of money. As long as your board is like decently strong. Next we have Morgana, which can be played in this. She has options. So you're 100% going to be playing her with Black Rose. And the reason for that, it's just a strong, stable board. But what you play with Black Rose has options. You can play her in the Visionary setup. This is the exact same, like, classic one that was played. And the thing here is that with Morgana 4, she's actually a strong carry. I think the base damage is like 1700. So, like, this thing is going to one-shot stuff. So, instead of playing around Heimer, you're just playing around Morgana. You're building the exact same Heimer items onto this Morgana. Or you can even deviate a little bit. Like maybe double buff Nasher or something. I'm not sure how the math turns out. It might just be that she does enough damage to one shot. So you just want her to cast as much as possible. I don't know how much AP she needs. But yeah. You can play around this, you can play around like more AP. And then you play the same kind of like main tank setup with like Garen and yeah. And with this, you have options. You play around Timer or Malzahar, but like the Morgana itself is a really strong carry now. Another tech you can do with Morgana is to play before you have Morgana 4 or before you have Morgana 3. You could play two Morganas, and this helps spread her ability. And her ability is like a status effect where it doesn't stack with itself. So the two different Morganas can't hit the same targets. So you can use the second Morgana to make it more likely that their main Morgana is going to hit backline. Now that's like a 50-50 as to which Morgana hits the backline, or like the correct backline target. But it's pretty good to get to the backline at all, because if you have items on Morgana, that usually just means a kill. So yeah. So yeah, when you're leveling to do something like this is usually going to be correct. Next we have Violet. Violet needs no introductions. I think everyone's sick of this comp. So you can either play this and re-roll this, or you can just take, like, you play the comp, but you're just pushing levels. And you get your Violet 4 for free, but you're not really re-rolling the rest. You're just getting, like, everything 2-star. And then just pushing for levels immediately. And you try to find like a Victor or something. You try to go 10. And you play around Violet 4 with like her normal items. And yeah, that's all there is to talk about that. It's very strong. It's not as strong as it was before, but it is very strong. You are kind of reliant on having good setup for your Vi, your Sabika. Uh, you want to try to find maybe a Victor, because otherwise you will start to hurt when your Vander isn't that tanky. I mean, you can honestly hold Vander, and maybe if you can get a 3-star Vander, that's pretty good because you actually have a bit of time. But I don't think you should reroll for the rest because that kind of defeats the purpose of getting all the free violets. You won't even have the bench space to hold all these things. So it is better to push levels, which is why I don't have this in S tier. I have an A tier. Okay, Singed 4 is insane. People didn't know about it for so long, but if you look here, this durability skills at 3-star, and then at 4-star it was skilled even more. It was used to be 72%, but they have since then nerfed it so that on like at this very moment, Singed, it says 60 here, but it's actually now 55 because they nerfed it, and then I think 4-star is like 60. So it is much weaker than it was before. However, what makes Singed 4 strong is that he is just a sentinel, so you can play him in pretty much any comp with a sentinel. It doesn't like really matter. Like he's still a better tank than stuff like just Leona, pretty comparable to Alawi. So in that regard, you just play him in the same stuff like you would normally do. You could play this classic one. You just play this and you're good to go. Now the ones that are actually like insane, uh Powder is strong just because the threshold that this Powder 4 like provides is like crazy. So you would normally want to push levels with this anyway, but it's really hard because Powder really wants 5 Ambusher, but if you were to reroll Powder, it takes a long time to get there. So, like Violet, you are just gonna push levels. Well, like all of them, you're just pushing levels. But I think 5 Ambusher on Powder is like really, really strong. And what this does to her ability, her base damage is like, I think like 1,000 or something. So she will actually just one-shot everything, like without fail, and yeah. Like what makes Powder different from Violet is that Powder much better covers for the weaknesses of her comp than Violet does, whereas Violet's comp has similar weaknesses in that depending on pathing and depending on how certain units are positioned, they can kind of get stuck, whereas Powder will clear everything. So even if there is something to get stuck on, Camille is really strong single target. Smeech has backline access, and so does Echo. I guess we'll just take out the board. This Powder will wipe out anything that is not the main tank, and you should have the tools to take out everything else with your other units. Like, what is legitimately an option worth considering is to just the solo frontline Powder. If she's 4-star, she's tanky enough to not die. Like, only do this if she's 4-starred. But she will clear everything so that when your units, by the time, she'll have enough time to cast before your units are like already there. So you'll leave just the main tank, and then by then you can maybe start getting like stuff to like wrap around. Let's say their tank is like a Garen. You can get like a wrapping situation. And sometimes you can just get them to start attacking backline immediately. But it is very strong. And it's easier to play than the Violet one because Violet is like she doesn't have the safety nets that you have with other stuff because for a long time I don't know how to explain it, but Violet is better when you're re-rolling the whole board, and Powder is better just pushing levels. Next we have Lux. So yeah, like I said, people have started to realize that Lux is OP because of Lone Hero. However, you don't need that to make it work. You can play the same setup if you want, and it's not even bad. However, you don't need to do that. You can also play a simpler setup like this. And Lux will keep you stable for a while, and you can play this with like Academy. Or you don't even have to play 6 Sentinel, you can play 4. But the point is with Worth the Wait, you shouldn't stay low level. You need to push levels and play around something. Dual carry options are Heimerdinger, you can play around Zoe, you can play around uh, Malzahar LeBlanc, you can play around Jace. But just a simpler Lux like carry setup also works, and you can play around or 2 traits. You actually don't even need to play around any traits. Lux kind of exists. Like if you give her one Archangel, she'll do her thing on her own because of just the way her scaling works. Like if she has enough AP to shield big and one-shot one unit, it doesn't really matter what else you have on the board. So you could literally play like Bruiser. You can play Bruiser, you can play Watcher, you can play Sentinel, you can play Academy, you can play Black Rose, you could play Conqueror if you really want to. Automata, like Lux is very like not reliant on her traits, which is why I think she's like so strong. And finally, I think Amumu's the best just because the two comps that are the best are like the easiest to play and get at high like placements right now are these two comps, and Amumu was played in both of them. Amumu 4 is also super tanky, so if whether you're playing Kog'Maw or Nocturne, Amumu is super strong early, and he scales pretty decently. And yeah, and like you're going to play him anyway for his traits, but if you put items on him and like he will like very easily get you a win streak. And at 4 star, I'm pretty sure he reduces incoming damage by 40 and does full 40 magic damage. So yeah, right now this is just a product of the meta, but I do think on its own, like even like on the first patch, like a Mumu 3 early on into like Fast 9, it was very easy to do. Like this was back when Automata was like terrible. So imagine how what it would be like now when Automata is actually good. So yeah, that is worth the wait one, which is the gold variation. And so that's every one cost comp ranked. I have the two cost variation, which is the prismatics. And this one's a little bit more skewed. Because it's prismatic, it's most of them are going to be good, but how you play them is a bit more niche. I think the worst one, if you noticed, is Leona. The reason it being Leona doesn't really scale. She doesn't have scaling. Her durability doesn't scale. Like she's unironically a worse unit than Singed. Uh, and her damage isn't very high, so there really isn't much value in having this. I think this is the only bad option for Prismatic worth the wait. Like at least you can have Leona 3. I wouldn't go to Leona 4 because it doesn't scale enough, but you can at least get 2 gold. But yeah, you would probably just play Academy or Sentinel or some variation and then just have a Leona 3 and a source of income, which isn't that bad. I think Rel and Set are similar. They scale a little bit better. Yeah. So Set at least does pretty decent damage. I don't think the stun scales, but at least he does okay damage. I think at 4 star, he does like 700 damage. Yeah, that seems a little high. I don't know, it's probably like 650 or something. But the point is, like, he does a not insignificant amount of damage, so it's not that bad. And then the other thing is that Rebel is like pretty happy having damage. I don't know how good it would be in Bruiser to take him and like give him like AP items. That might be a thing. Eh, I don't know if his damage is high enough early on. Maybe something like this in Bruiser. Yeah, this might be a tech, but I don't know how confident I am in it, so I'm not going to talk about it. I think more, or okay, I'm not going to elaborate so much further. More realistically, you play sets 4 star in Rebel, and you just have him as a better tank. Well, not as a better tank, as like a better secondary tank. Like the only reason I think he's better than Leona is because I think having set 3, or like having set 3 is better than having Leona 3, and I think there's an in theory an argument for set 4 Even though at the end of the day, it's still probably just going to be plus 2 goals every round after you have to the set 3. Maybe even after set 2. I don't know. I think he just needs a buff. I think maybe I should move him. Rel, like similar to Set, at least she kind of scales. Like her shield at least gets a bit bigger. She gets more armor and magic resist. So she actually does become tankier. The only problem is that a lot of the comps that you play her in don't really need that. She's okay in Conqueror. Like Sentinel is not that necessary, but in the other option is to play her with Visionary, and that kind of opens some doors. I don't think you play this. I think it's like the option that you have is to play her in Legendary Flex, and then you can main tanker, and that is actually a pretty solid option. However, I'm not convinced that Aurel 3/4 is better than Garen, which is why it's not that high. However, I do think I probably should have set lower, and Aurel should probably just be B tier. Like, I'm not gonna. Okay, Akali, they nerfed her at the start of this patch. I don't know why, but they nerfed her. So Akali could be higher, but she's not. So she is here. She's the worst 2-star carry, the worst 2-cost carry. She's not even bad. If you get it for free, it's not bad. And then 4-star Akali is actually good. The problem is just that she's not that stable in the mid game because she's nerfed. You could realistically play her in Rebel, or you can play her in Quickstriker. The thing is, you're not really rerolling Quickstriker, so I think either way, you are just playing her with Mbessa, and you're not gonna go further than that. In which case, I think in this case, you can just play Rebel and play Tempo, and you can realistically play around the Cauliflower, and you duo carry, like, just the normal setup. Zoe, Jinx, or Mbessa, just whoever you have items for. And then this Kali would just have, like, this. And, like, since you don't have to reroll for it, it's, like, not bad. And if you don't want to hit a Cauliflower, I think you can sell her. I think a Cauliflower is, like, pretty good. So if you do manage to get to that, then she becomes pretty good. I think what's the damage? It is like it's enough to just one shots whatever. So I think it's worth it if you manage to last that long. However, Akali early on isn't strong enough to be stable, so that's why I wouldn't recommend Akali. Oh, I mean you don't have control, but Akali isn't like a super high roll option. Camille was over nerfed, However, I think she got B patch buffed, so now she's like not as bad. And if you get to Camille 4, then she's OP. But before then, you're gonna notice a fall off. So Camille stage 2 is pretty strong. Stage 3, she's like pretty decently strong. And having a Camille 3 early on it would be really good. So like if you get a Camille 3 like somewhere in the middle of stage 3, then you can extend your likelihood of like having high health by stage 4. The problem is that you get Camille 4 pretty late, and Camille like the ambusher board like will struggle in like towards the end of stage 4 and during stage 5. So you might just bleed out all your health there, but if you manage to make it past that, then by the time you hit your Camille 4, you're actually pretty like you're pretty strong. But since the nerfs, I do think Camille is a little too weak to survive stage 4 and 5. But if you get to Camille 4, then she's like with Akali, she's strong. I do think Akali has the advantage that like the board she's played in is a little stronger than the Camille board, but you don't have to reroll, so you'll be level 8 pretty easily, and you can play around Echo, and Echo's pretty strong. And if you hit Jinx early, that's also pretty decent option. Like at the very least, Camille is a good tempo into the Echo Jinx comp. So if you can stay healthy, then you could be okay. Next we have Zeri. Zeri, I mean, like not commonly a carry, like main carry, but you can. She's been slowly getting buffed, so now I think she's like pretty decent spots. We're still a bit underrated. You just play her in this. You don't have to reroll her, so you can just push levels for more things. Like you could probably stay on level 8 and you reroll Scar and you look for like Echo. But I think Zeri's actually a pretty decent carry now. I think she's been constantly getting buffed, and she was always on the cusp of being good. I think now she's probably gotten there, and people haven't realized it yet. At the very least, like a B tier and A tier comp as the primary carry. But with Worth the Wit specifically, you have the benefits of not having to sit at level 6 to reroll her. So you can play around strong units and traits like 6 Watcher and 3 Firelights. You can even consider playing 4 Sniper. That's also an option. And finally, we have Urgot. I think Urgot has the potential to be strong. It's just like a little annoying because you'd have to play him. Okay, you have options, but the boards that you're gonna play him with are a little awkward. So the first option is just to play on the emissary board with this, and then you play. I mean, okay, you could just play like this, and then like the normal stuff. And you would add like a sentinel and like this. And you play around these two. I think another option could be play around. Like you play around the experiments. I don't know if you need five, but let's say you have this. Play on this board. Something like this. And the third option is just is vertical pit fighter. Which also like has some merits. Now I never hit this one, so I don't know. But if I figure out what's best, because like this hungry crab, but like though that board was built around optimizing hungry crab, so if you're not doing that, I don't really know what the best Urgot's board is. It might just be six pit fighter. Plus like I guess experiments. Like you don't have to stay low level so you can actually hit everything. So that's not even bad. But I have him higher than like the other units because I think he's just a better unit as a carry. I just think the board is a little less obvious, and I need to play Urgot more, so that's a bit of my bad. S tier. There's a lot of S tier because there's a lot of really strong two costs. Renata. So the awkward thing is it's hard to reroll all the sentinels, but it's very easy to hit the traits that you want. So you just play Renata 4, and you don't reroll any of the sentinels because it's you don't have the bench space for that. But instead, you could just easily hit 6, and then you can also hit 4 Visionary easily, and then call it a day. And like you do like your positioning or whatever. And so, because you don't have to reroll at all, you just put stuff on Alawi because she's 4 cost tank. Pretty easy to do stuff with, and then uh, and pushing levels, it's just as strong. Uh, with 6 Sentinel, it's like kind of the same as having like your 3-star tanks, but you have access to Heimer and Malzahar. So it's a pretty decent option. Apart from that, you can also play Renata in this board. And you just play Renata like 4 in this board. And it's the same concept. I mean, I guess you put like Renata more towards the middle. But this also works. Any visionary board you can do, it works fine. Tristana, she has some options. You have Sentinel. Okay, well, okay, Tristana's going to be the same regardless. You are always going to 4-star her. Your items are probably going to be something like this. Or like this. Or if you can find a thing like that. And your options are either Emissary, 6 Sentinel, or 6 Bruiser. 6 Bruiser is actually, like, not bad now. Like, I've been seeing 6 Sentinel, I mean, not 6 Bruiser Tristana, and it's actually pretty good. You like play around these two. I think Bruiser Frontline has been underappreciated for a while, so it's finally getting its attention. So yeah, 6 Bruiser and then +1 artillery. Boom. So that's one option, and then next is just this board. Play around Tristana. You can also consider playing 4 Artillerist, however, I think your board is a little squishy, so if you drop these two, you have not much frontline. Which you don't really need because you have a lot of damage. But the thing is, with Tristana, you already get a lot of AD for free, and you're gonna get Tristana 4 for free, so I don't think you need 4 Artillerist. Because all the benefit you're getting from Tristana is already here. And like you're not rerolling Urgot anyway. So I do think you want a bit more frontline with this. Worth the wait. And then the last option is just Sentinel, which is also like the same kind of thing. And this is already like classic. I say Nocturne. Nocturne's played the same way, except the benefit is that you don't have to reroll on 6, you can reroll on 7. And you can reroll for Twisted Fate and Blitzcrank, or like Kog'Maw. Or if you have an Automata emblem somehow, you also can just not reroll anything. And you just push for 6 Automata and you have your Nocturne 4. But either way, this is the basic board you play in some way, shape, or form. But notice how this stuff doesn't fit on 6. So if you have your 3-star Nocturne for free, you can push 7 and then look for better traits. If you want to reroll on 7 for like this stuff, you can, but you probably wouldn't go for both of these at the same time. If you have an Automata emblem, you just go 9 and you look for Malzahar and you win that way. Because Nocturne 3 is enough early and then 4 is enough late. And Nocturne, if you look at the stats, it's pretty good. So Nocturne is just good because he's good in he's just good even without anything. Next we have blood. Okay. Tech time. The cool tech. So we have seen this thing take over the meta, and yeah, I'm surprised it took as long as it did for that to leak, because I've known about that for a while. And they stole other stuff that I came up with more recently. So I'm surprised this one. I mean, I didn't even make this one, but I've known about it since day one from the person who made it. But I'm surprised it didn't get stolen. But now it's known, so now it's public. So everyone has suffered this. There's a better variation. Not a better, but like it's just another variation, which is to play around the different units, which might have been spoiled by the what this is. So yeah, you play around Vlad. I mean, you don't need worth the wait for this, but like, it's just better in this case. Boom. Wait, it's worse. What am I missing? Boom. And with that, GG, the game is won. So this board you can actually fits early. You don't have to reroll. So normally you would reroll this, and then you'd be like 4 Watcher until you hit. Like you'd be Watcher until you hit 4 Emissary, and then you hit 4 Emissary, 4 Watcher, and then yeah. But with this, oh, oops, wrong one, wrong button. You can get this for free. So you just push levels. You play around this. Play Ambessa secondary carry. Around Clear and Tank. And yeah, this is disgusting. This is pretty much Lone Hero Lux, except you don't need an augment. Well, actually, I mean, okay, you have worth the wait too in this case, but you don't need it. But if you have it, you pretty much have Lone Hero. And Vlad also already heals. So yeah. This is very strong, and it'll be public. I mean, it's technically public now, but it'll be popular and meta once more people understand. So I guess I'll skip around to the other option. I mean, okay, so normally you would be re-rolling. So like the normal version of the comp without worth the wait, you're playing this. Like this is just a comp. And you wouldn't hit like the stuff yet, but like this is your board. So you either hit worth the weight Vladimir, or you hit worth the weight Vander, and then Vander 4 is like it's just better. And the reason being, this guy's immortal at 4-star. Like he's just actually immortal. So like at least Vlad like has the take time. Like this setup blocks him. You could set him free if you want, but he has a chance of being killed early on, so it's a little risky. Vander has pretty much no risk of being killed early on, so like he's just too tanky. And similar to the Vlad setup in Worth the Wait, you just push levels and you get 6 Watcher in early, and you don't worry too much about Vlad. You still hold Vlads, but you don't prioritize this. Like in the Vlad comp, you don't really need that to worry about Vander that much because you can play around Mbessa, and it's kind of fine. But in this one, you don't really have a good item holder for AP items. Like you have Nami, but she's not like that crazy. Like I don't think I would rather reroll the Vlad over the Nami, like on like level 8 or 9 odds. So like that's enough said about that. But this is played the same way, and you're broken. You also don't have to play with Vander specifically. You have the option of not playing Emissary, and instead you could play Family. It just makes it a little bit better for him. And then you just look for another carry. Like you have space for other stuff, so you can just play like random like LeBlanc or Victor or Jinx, whatever you can fit. But yeah, Vander becomes very strong because his armor magical scaling is better. His base damage for his ability is really high. At 3-star, he can already one-shot. At 4-star, he will one-shot and overheal, or overkill and overheal. So it is pretty much Lone Hero Lux, except it's just Vander. And it's a 1 cost, and he also buys time for whatever backline you have. So if you actually do play a backline, like any backline you want, it doesn't have to be this. You don't have to do this at all. You can just play normal Vlad, and then you can play like Zoe. Around and something that has traits, yeah, like Sorcerer with Zoe. Uh, I don't know. There aren't that many traits that fit in, but like Automata. I mean, you have like, not that actually not that many slots. You have, I guess, the one. Maybe the emissary board is better. But either way, you have more options. And this unit is disgustingly broken at 4-star. Well, at 3-star he's also good. Together, like, okay, so these two are good together when 3-starred, and at 4-star you just play around one of them. The last one is Ziggs. Ooh. So Worth the Wait Ziggs is really nice because it plays around how Ziggs wants to be played anyway, which is you just want to somehow teleport to Ziggs 3 and then push levels, but Worth the Wait already does that, so you are just teleporting to Ziggs 3 and then eventually to Ziggs 4 and you're pushing levels. So like it's just exactly what you want. What am I missing? Window. So you just push levels and you hit your Ziggs 4 for free. And bam. And yeah, this is literally exactly what you want to do as Ziggs. because he's super awkward to reroll because he's a 2 cost, but everything you would want to reroll him is a higher cost. And the general game plan is hit Ziggs 3 as fast as possible and just push levels. You were doing that already, so you can literally just teleport to level 9, level 10, and yeah, this is like actually insanely strong. The only thing is that Ziggs is probably gonna get nerfed because people are already understand that Ziggs is super strong. And if you get Ziggs 3 for free and then eventually Ziggs 4, like let's say even the scaling on Ziggs 4, like the bomb is probably at least okay. So 270 to 450, that's 8, that's 180. So I would expect at least plus 200. And then with Dominator, yeah, no, it's absolutely absurd. The mini bombs should be at least 300. Yeah, that is yeah. This comp is just good, and this is there's you don't have to do anything, and it's yeah, that's it. But that's worth the wait too. I would move set down. Everything else is like fine. But yeah, that's all I've got. It's a bit late to be playing games because I have stuff to do. So I will wrap it up there. But it was nice to get a stream in, considering how busy I've been. I I will most likely get some more streams in this week, at least one or two. So that should be fine. But I do have stuff to worry about. So it's not going to be like I'm still going to be a little bit inactive, but it's at least like I said, it's a bit nice to have something to show for myself. I'm going to call it here. I need to wake up early. Not that early actually, but like early enough. So I'm going to call it here. I have the content that I wanted. I actually meant to do this last stream, but not last. I meant to stream earlier and then stream this, but I didn't have time. I meant to stream like I think last Sunday, and then yeah, so it's been like a week and a half, which is not ideal, but it's okay. I have more content prepared, and then after this type of stuff, I have more the content of other types for TFT and for League. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, I'm gonna call it here. So for me, it is late. So if you're in a different time zone, good morning, good afternoon. If you're in a similar time zone, good nights to everyone. And take care for these holidays, whether you celebrate them or not. Yeah.